Okay, well, it's 2 o'clock, so Jen and I are going to get started here this afternoon. Wanted to say thank you for taking the time today. Our presentation is regarding terminations, paperwork, and documentation. For some of you guys, it may be some review. There may be some good pointers that you can take away from this. And then also we're going to go through the process of the terminations. So the agenda for the day, I know you guys always hear this all the time. Documentation, documentation, documentation. So we're going to cover a little bit about that. We're going to review some of the reasons for terms. We're going to do the process of the terms of, how a store processes a term. Jen's going to talk a little bit on the importance of terming minors and what needs to be done there. And then what happens when we receive the terms here at the office, why we do ask for certain things that we ask for. So that's what we're going to cover here today. The one thing, again, you probably get tired of hearing this all the time, documentation. I can't stress enough how important documentation is. The good, the bad. Please make sure that you're muted. The good, the bad, and anything that you can on an employee, because when something happens and we have to terminate an employee, it's a good opportunity to have the documentation on that. Please be sure that you're muted, please. So the importance of documentation, again, when completing terminations on employees, be sure to have the specific documentation based on the reason of terms. A lot of times what happens is we'll get terminations with regard to the reasoning in there, but then there's no specific information. So poor performance. When you are terming an employee on poor performance, you're going to need to know the specific performance issues, stating the specific the tasks that they were having issues with, dates and times of incidents. Also give the employee the opportunity to improve that behavior. And then the next step would be a written warning, possibly a suspension, and then termination. Manager employees should have a witness. Managers and the employee should sign and have it witnessed. And then if the employee refuses to sign it, then the employee can write why they refused. And we do run into that sometimes, like if there is an incident report, the employee will refuse to sign it, but we'd like them to state why they refuse to sign it, because, we do like to have a signature on that, of course, so it's the documentation regarding the poor performance. No call, no show. I get a lot of terminations with regard to no call, no show. And when the terminations come through, that's the reason, no show, no call. However, there's no dates or specific dates and times of when the no show, no call. So it kind of looks like, okay, that person didn't show up for a one shift and we termed them. So was there a specific reason? Did you reach out to that employee? Did you get an explanation? And then, of course, if you do reach out to the employee and you can't get a hold of them or you can't get in touch with them, then at that time, of course, you can say no show, no call, attempted to call this employee on this time and this date. Because when we get these terms in here and it says no show, no call, and there's no specific information, and I have to send this over to unemployment, unemployment's going to ask these questions like, who termed the person? What was the reasoning behind that? Did that person attempt to reach out to that employee? So they will ask for specifics and explanations regarding. And then, I know the policy is after 3 times, if they don't show or call, then it is termination. But if it's just one time and you can get in touch with them and you can find out a reason, and then you can counsel them on this and have documentation, maybe you can get this employee to improve the situation. But I know there will be times where, you will not be able to reach out to that employee, and then it's okay to term. But again, when you're terming employees and you put the reason, we need an explanation of that reason, because, it may go to unemployment. We may have a hearing that comes up, regarding that specific employee. So that's why we're looking for the specific documentation on the termination. walk out. We get a lot of these too, terms where an employee walks out. Now, we would want to find out, if we can, the specific reason of why that employee walked out. Maybe they were having a bad night. Maybe someone stressed them out. Maybe they had a confrontation with another employee. They were upset. If you can, get in touch with that person. Now, if you can't, and they're specifically not, receiving or taking your calls, then, just say, I attempted to call this person, walked out on this shift at this time. And then if there's any witnesses, maybe there's some witnesses to a situation that may have happened that made this employee walk out. And that's when you'll have to do, an investigation to see what happened. Is there more to the situation than just that employee walking out? Was they being bullied? Was they being threatened? But just saying walk out on a term, we need to have some, more specific information, documentation. Was the job too stressful? Just document. And again, I'm going to stress it all the time. Documentation is very important. And Jen can, say the same thing. Like when we run into situations and we're trying to pull information here at the office and we have no documentation to back it up, we're going to lose unemployment or we're going to lose a hearing because the documentation is either not there or it's poorly written. So, I can't stress enough, how important the documentation is. Okay, excessive tardiness or absenteeism. We do run into this a good bit. And again, you put the reason there, but we need specific on dates and times. Is there a specific reason why that employee was late? Are they someone that wants to leave early all the time? Is there something that's going on in their personal life that may be causing these situations? So when it becomes a behavior that is problematic, we should be counseling this employee, seeing what the situation is, and then again, remind them of their availability, like, or do they need to update their availability forms and, requesting off procedures. It's just a few extra steps. Sometimes it might just be an employee that just doesn't get it and they never show up, or, that at that time, then you can term. But sometimes there is situations that we may need to be aware of, and maybe you can fix that problem or work with that individual and see if there is availability that needs to be switched. So just again, think of that when you're doing, terminations or writing somebody up with regard to excessive tardiness or absenteeism. Not available to work when needed. We get a lot of these too, where it states the reason, but it doesn't give us any explanation. So what is the situation, why the employee has such limited availability that the employee is not available to work when needed in our restaurant? Manager may have that conversation. Here's another instance that maybe you could work with that employee and see if there is something going on, or again, if the availability has changed. I know, these days it's very hard to keep employees, but if it's just a matter of changing their schedule. And then here's another thing too. Is there a medical situation or some type of a situation where they may need to take some time off? So at that time, they may need to be put on a personal leave or a medical leave. So maybe an employee change of status form would be needed at that time. And, they may need to have a couple weeks off. And then when they come back, then, they're able to work the hours needed. So there's a whole there's so many different situations that could arise. And, again, it's just communicating to the employee just to see what's going on. And again, if they just can't work what we need them, then you term them. But there needs to be more put on the terms with regard to that situation. Okay. And then Jen's going to cover these because these are more her area.
The violation of a known rule. When we get these in, these shouldn't be a surprise when they come through the email. We need to be specific on the incident that occurred, write down exactly what happened. Depending on the rule violated, an investigation might be necessary. If it's something to do with a legal issue or there's possibly he said, she said. We definitely want to do an investigation and get down to the bottom and get all the necessary information before determining the appropriate disciplinary action. Typically pretty standard. We do follow the write-up, suspension, termination process. Sometimes these violations of a known rule can be more serious and we might skip steps, especially in cases of like harassment or violence, things like that, theft. We might not give them all of the opportunities to correct the behavior that we typically do for, lesser, performance issues. When running into this violation of a known rule, please be sure to contact the employee relations manager, which is myself, to discuss all these violations, and I'll help you through the process. We'll talk about it. We'll determine if an investigation needs to be done, who all needs to be involved, and we'll go from there. I'm definitely here to help you with that process. That's a major aspect of my job, and I take great pride in that. So please be sure that you're reaching out to me. Do not send in a termination form with just violation of a known rule, because it's kind of harder to work back from that. We need to know from the beginning. We need to get the facts, the statements, pull the video footage if necessary, and do the investigation properly. Okay, some other reasons for terminations would be classified as kind of like personal reasons. These include other employment. When they do leave our employment for other employment, we like to know a little bit more about what's going on. If it's better working conditions they're leaving for, better pay, better benefits, a career change. That's really common in our industry, right? People are working for us, they go to college and they get a career in their field. That's great. We just want to know what they're doing and field of study. Sometimes people move and leave the area. We like to know that as well too. It's great if we can get an address before they leave. That way we can send them any 401k information, final pay stubs, anything like that they might need from us. They might leave for college. We like to know this because this could be a great opportunity for us too. Maybe they don't have to quit to go to college. Maybe we can transfer them to a different location, right? Military, we like to know about if they're dissatisfied with the job or hours for any reason. We like to know that too. If it's something we can improve on, we want to take that opportunity. Transportation problems, personal reasons, failed to return from a leave of absence, or no reason given. Either way, we just like to pinpoint this down. It helps us in the future to know exactly if we have issues in any aspects and if we can correct those ourselves. Okay, next I'm going to talk about like the actual processing of the terminations at the source. So this is what you guys are doing. It seems like with the new system, there has been a few issues. I think for the most part, people have them worked out, but if not, we'll go through the process real quick. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to log on to Spot On and select the employee, select your location, and gather the employee information. After that, you're going to go back to your desktop and click on the term report icon. And then click new term report. You're going to enter the information you gathered from Spot On. So the employee's social security number, pay rate, title, hire date, last day work, term date. For the reason, you're going to hit the drop down bar and select the reason. And then here is where you're going to type in these comments. And this is the part that's missed so often. And that's a big piece of documentation that we need for unemployment and any kind of hearings. So that's just your more detail. Be sure that if you're the employee is eligible for rehire, that you check the eligible for rehire box. If it's not checked, it automatically defaults to not eligible for rehire. And this creates a little bit more difficulty. If that employee would be rehired, we have to contact IT and get them to do a manual process to put this employee back in the system. So we want to make sure we're checking that box if it's if we need to. Next, you're going to hit preview report. And then you're going to close print preview and then go back to the term report icon to see if the employee shows up in the drop-down list. You're going to click on each employee individually to be sent to home office. Check the drop-down bar again to make sure it went through. There should be no names. The most important thing in doing this process is make sure you're doing them at one at a time. If you're doing more than one at a time, it causes issues. They kind of get backed up, and often we have to contact IT and Michael has to go in there and somehow he clears them out. Another important thing is if your terms aren't coming through, Brenda's running that no check report and you're seeing individuals in there that you did a term for, you also need to reach out to IT and make sure that the process is working for your store. If IT don't know about it, Michael can't just go in there and fix things he doesn't know about. So if we're having issues, we want to get this cleaned up and make it as smooth of a process as possible. That way we have the documentation we need if anything happens, the terms there. We don't have people active. If they're hanging out there active and they're actually termed, it can mess up a lot of things. First off, it's throwing up your rate, it's messing up your employee count. So we don't know if you need employees in specific areas because things look good because you have all these termed employees on your roster. Another big thing is 401ks. So when I send them the payroll file, it actually has start dates and term dates. If we don't have a term date in their system, these terms employees can't roll out their money, they can't pull out their cash. And I'm sure there's a lot of other things that affects as well as that I'm just not aware of. So we want to make sure we're keeping those numbers as clean as possible and that we're getting these terms done in a timely fashion. The next thing I'm going to talk about is also very time sensitive, and this is something that we get audited on as a company. And these are our minor terminations. So the school district must be notified of all minor terminations. There is a minor termination form located on the portal that must be completed on the last day worked and sent to the school district and emailed to me, the employee relations manager. The form is located on the portal. This is extremely time sensitive. Is there a copy of? Yeah.
Yep, right there.
So this is extremely time sensitive. It's actually Pennsylvania state law that this has to be completed within 5 days of the employee's last day worked. We need to get this to them as soon as possible. When you fill out this form, we want to make sure it's the last day worked. And I know sometimes, some people just abandon their job and their last day work might not be the date that this form gets sent in, but it needs to be sent in when we're doing the termination. One thing I'm running into is we're having a couple different dates, and this is going to cause concerns and red flags on our audit. The last day worked is different from the date the manager is signing it, and then the date in GP as their last day worked is different than the last day worked on this form and the date. So when I'm getting these, I'm oftentimes getting 3 dates, and I know that's really confusing. It's confusing when I look at it. But these auditors are getting a report, which is pulled directly from GP, and they're getting a copy of this form. So we're going to have red flags if these dates aren't matching. It's a very, very, very important that the last day worked on this minor termination form matches the last day worked on your termination that you're processing and ultimately ends up in GP. Those last days need to match. They have to. And if the reason is not no call, no show, or job abandonment, the date that the manager is signing needs to match that last day work. We need to get that in. The 5 days, that's the state law. There's no leeway for that. So it needs to be submitted. If you have questions, you can call me about this form as well after this training. I know it's new, but it has to be done for every minor.
And I'll just go back again to where it's located. You can go to the portal and it's under the manuals and forms, the form directory, HR forms, and it'll be called minor termination form, Haas's Marzonis. Again, it's a big important step that it gets completed on the last day worked for that minor.
We actually, for our last audit, we received a warning regarding this. So I'm certain on the next audit, if it's not corrected properly, that we will get fined and docked for that. So it's extremely important. Even though it's new, we don't have much time. We need to get it implemented quickly and running smoothly into the school districts.
Now, with regard to once terms get here at the corporate office, a lot of the times you guys will complete your terms and go through the program as we discussed. And what happens here at the corporate office is it'll download the scanned form into these different directories for us. So when you do your terms and they come through correctly, what happens is it'll come in through these directories for us. So you can see when we're pulling them here at the office, there's a directory for the Haas terms and there's a directory for the Marzonis, and it'll show us the term and the name of the employee. And once this comes over, what we do on our end is we'll scan that into GP, which is our payroll system or our HRIS system where everything is housed. So we can scan that form in. And then if there's any documentation for that termed employee that you want to send along that might not be able to be put into the program, you can always email it to myself or to Jen, and we'll scan that also into the incidents or reports or documentation in GP for that employee. But again, it's very important. I know with some of the systems, it's been, we've been having issues, and, between Jen, I, and Delaney, because, Jen does the terms and I help her with the terms. I do the no check report, which means after 4 weeks, if a person is not active, they should either be on a leave or they should be termed. We'd like to know what the reason. Again, it's because, we want to make sure we do have clean data. And again, be sure to term in a timely manner. Now, I'm going to explain how the process works. Now, you should term that employee on their last day worked. And what will happen is when it comes into us and we put it into GP, we are able to put in and say, pay as of the next paycheck. So they're going to get paid for all that time that they worked up till that last day worked. So it will take care of that. I know some stores are holding those terms thinking that they're not going to get paid, but we have the control in here to process the next pay that we know they will be paid for those hours. So we can do that. Like, you don't have to hold the terms. And again, I can't stress enough. Now, the no check report has been really, I commend you guys. It's been great. And when I need information, you guys are really attentive in getting that back to me. And again, it's just that we need to have the clean data. We need to have this stuff in a timely fashion. So that's why we're stressing again, you can do these terms on their last day worked. And here's the other thing, it's fresher in your memory and all the, that you can get it done. So if you can do them in a timely manner, that would be great. So in conclusion, we're going to just go through again. I can't stress enough, documentation, again, is very important. We do look at a lot of different things. I look at a lot of different things for unemployment. Jen looks at a lot of things for, that we need it for any hearings or anything that, she would come into, that would, help with that. Terms should be completed and with as much information as you can. The explanation for terms, you can put some comments in there. And again, terms need to be complete, concise, accurate, timely, specific, and consistent. And the data that is retrieved is helped with our retention. So, we do look at we talked about the data that we look at, like, why are people leaving? What's happening, so that we can know maybe what some things that we need to improve on. So that's why, documentation regarding, the reason and everything we look at here at the office, so that we can, make sure that maybe it's something that we can do better at, like, to keep these employees. And remember that a termed employee may file unemployment or a lawsuit. And then another thing is when you are doing documentation on an employee, are the other managers able to understand that documentation? So be sure that you're writing it in a neat manner, and that everybody understands exactly, what is being documented on that employee. So this is just a little refresher. We're just about 25 minutes. So we wanted to keep you about 25 minutes to 30 minutes. If you have any questions, and always, if you, have any difficulties or, have anything that you need clarified further, you can give Jen or I a call, and we're always here. Does anybody have any questions? We have a couple minutes. If not, I'm gonna give you back the rest of your afternoon. And again, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule and have a great rest of the day. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.